but here we go. I hope some of this makes some sense. När Frida och James gifte sig i London för 10 månader sedan och igen när jag var i Örebro i augusti så lovade jag James och Frida att jag skulle lära mig lite svenska för mitt tag idag. Idag är jag här för att säga sorry. För jag är inte lärt mig något med svenska och glömt att jag tidigare lärt mig så jag är ledsen. Men nu måste jag tyvärr fortsätta på engelska. And I hope that's what I said was I really meant to learn some Swedish for this speech. I promised a long time ago that I would. And I didn't. I learned nothing. I'm really sorry. I really did mean to, but I failed. So it really is English from here on in. Part of the reason why I wanted to learn the Swedish, because unlike most best men, I've had to do this speech twice now. It's not really something you're meant to do. Certainly those of you in London will have heard most of my stories about James already, and I wanted to do something fresh. Although James and Frida, to be fair to them, have actually tried to do their best to give me new material over the last few months. It started off actually just before the last wedding when I had a phone call on Saturday afternoon from James. Stood in the wedding ring shop with Frida. Phone call from James, I answer it. It's Frida saying, sorry, here's your first favour to best man. I said, sure, pass him on. It's James saying, sorry, we're just about to buy the wedding rings. And I've realised that there's no money left in my account and my credit card is bounced. I was trying to think of someone who could lend me a couple of £1,000 at short notice. Well, you're the only person I have, really. So a few minutes later, he had a couple of grand in his account and he paid for the wedding rings. For a few weeks, I actually owned the wedding rings for James and Frida's wedding. Unfortunately, he paid me back just before the wedding, and I wasn't really sure legally who would have been married to Frida at the end of the show. And not phased by that, he thought he could go one better on the wedding day itself. Partway through the evening, he lost his wallet, his credit cards, he lost everything. And say he lost it. We actually know who did lose it. Frida lost it. Look after this, he says, never comes back to him. And so come the end of the evening, and James had a special surprise for Frida. It was a night in the Ritz, just down the road. Of course, with no money, how could he pay for his night in the Ritz? A special wedding gift for his bride. So up I step again. James, here's my credit card, here's my PIN number, off you go. Don't tell them who you are, just give them the card. 10 minutes later, I get a phone call. James, sorry, Ali, I'm here in the Ritz. They don't believe me. They don't believe I'm you, and they need you to come and sign the card for me. So off I come at about 1 in the morning. 3 in the morning. With the receptionist laughing away, James looking very embarrassed, to sign away an open credit card with his evening and the lunch the day after. Good start to our own life, James.
Thank you.
Shortly after that, he thought, I've done such a good job looking after the wedding, why don't I actually look after his wife as well? And so while he went to New York, he packed Frida up and put her into my living room for about 4 or 5 weeks. 6 weeks. At this point, I didn't have to stop and think to myself, I bought the wedding rings, I bought the night in the hotel, and she's now living with me. Now I'm told that normal service has been resumed, and Frida very happily told me last week that James has a new favourite game. It's coming out of the bathroom on a Saturday morning while drunk and chasing her around the flat naked. Unfortunately, the neighbours can't see you on the bottom of the floor.
credit the game.
Yeah, I know what it's called. I'm not sharing it. Anyway, as I was saying earlier, I really wanted a few news stories with James, because I said most of them in the last speech. I sent an email out to all of you who were coming on the stag do to see if anyone had any good stories about James, and you were all rubbish. Not a single person replied. Not a single person apart from one. Bob. Fortunately, Bob was the one person I actually wanted to reply to that email, so it was all okay. Because what I really wanted to know was, what was James like as a child? What trouble did he cause? What made him the man he is today? When I read what Bob had written, I was taken a little bit surprised with some of the points. Here we are. Point 1. The day before he was born, he was sailing on Lake Windermere, and the day he came out of hospital, he was back on the lake. Yeah, okay, we knew James was a very good sailor. He came third in the World Championships once. I think it all went a bit wrong in the Nottingham University training regime, which mainly consisted of vodka and chicken wings at coaches. I think there's the answer to your question. Where did it all go wrong with the sailing? From the moment he was born, he was very active. He did not want to sleep. So as long as he was conscious of what was going on around him, he was very happy and contented. When asked what he would like for birthdays or Christmas, the answer would always be the same. A surprise. And what have we learned from that? James can never make a decision. He was always prepared to have a go. Swimming, walking, climbing, abseiling, gorge walking, canoeing, sailing, windsurfing, skiing, horse riding and orienteering. In fact, all outdoor activities. And I suspect that, having spoken to his childhood friends, the main reason for this may be is whenever you weren't in the house, he used to climb up into the top shelf and steal your big tub of fizzy fish and see how many he could fit in his mouth at any one point in time. I think a child with that much sugar in his system will need to do that much outdoor sports. Apparently 32 was the record, which I think is pretty impressive. And finally, music was always a challenge. Practice makes perfect was not his favourite phrase. Mum and Dad were delighted when he changed from violin to flute. And despite Pat's attempted professional input, dancing was an activity to be avoided as far as James was concerned. Yes, we will see James on the dance floor. It's not pretty, and we're looking forward to seeing it again later. But something seemed missing. It all seemed a little bit rose-tinted, this perfect boy of which they spoke of. This didn't seem like the James we all knew and loved. The James who once tried to climb out of a window of the men's toilets in order to escape the advances of an admiring young lady who was waiting outside. Only to have to go back and fix the music when he realised he couldn't squeeze through. The James who once threw a pint over a man who was 6'5" and 20 stone. That's around 130 kilograms for those of you who work in the metric system. Then he seemed surprised when he was literally picked up off the ground by his neck. Unfortunately, Will on this occasion decided to spare his life, so thank you for that, Will. Very good. This is the James who introduced the world to his own recipe cocktail. A 9/10 vodka and a 1/10 lime cordial served in a full pint glass. And this is the James who will take his trousers off in a friend's house while playing computer games because he just finds it more comfortable to play in his pants. So this week, I've been asking, in fact I've been goading really Bob and Pat, whether he really was that good as a child. Surely he must have done something wrong. Well, what was that one time when he had his drink spiked and we had to pick it up from a nightclub, they said? Spiked. James. The only person who's ever spiked your drink is yourself. Now is your one opportunity to tell your parents that that was entirely self-inflicted. This is honesty, James. This is the way you're going to spend the rest of your life. You're going to live it on a lie. himself with all those shots. There we go, I did tell you. So what we've learned is he's very good at covering his own tracks with his parents. And so I asked Pat, where did it all go wrong? If he was such a good child, where did it all go wrong? And the response I got was, I blame you, Ali. Maybe you like all of this rent in Nottingham. And when I look out here today and I see many of you here sitting around me, I hope you had the same feeling that I had welling up inside me when I was told that. Just that slight hint of pride. Pride not just because yes, what most of Pat says is true, although I always will maintain you took us down as much as we took you down. But also because I realised then that together James, myself, many of you all here today all shared in much of the best years of our lives together. And for all of the vodkas, sambucas, tequilas, Goldschlagers, and Jägerbombs consumed during the varying birthday parties, stag do's, weddings, and now christenings, over the last 13 and a half years, two things have remained pretty constant. One, abject patheticness of James the following morning when he has a hangover. And two, the quality and consistency of our friends who are there. And so many of you have travelled so far to be here today means a lot to me for that reason. And I know it means a lot more to James and Frida too. And since James and I first met in 1997, some 13 years ago, we've never been too far apart. He even lived on my living room floor for 6 months, after I once said he could come and stay for a few days while he sorted himself out for the room. And whilst the title of Best Man may not have seemed all that appropriate to those who saw me yesterday, it does mean a lot to be here, standing here today. So James, thank you once again for asking me to be your best man, and hopefully one day I'll return the favour, although I might be kind enough only to ask you to do it once.